There's an ant in the rainforest that isn't walking where it should. It's climbing, higher and higher, away from its colony, away from food, away from safety. It reaches a leaf, a specific height, a specific position, and then it bites down. Its jaws lock onto the leaf permanently. It can't let go. It doesn't want to let go. The ant will die here. It knows this. Or rather, what's left of the ant knows this, because the ant stopped making its own decisions days ago. Something else is driving now. Over the next few hours, a stalk will emerge from the ant's head. It will release spores. Those spores will drift down to the forest floor, where other ants are walking. And the cycle begins again. This isn't a disease. This is design. Brutal, precise, horrifying. This is what happens when evolution decides that one life can be fuel for another. Nature never meant this to exist, but it does. Parasites exist everywhere. They're part of nature's architecture. Most of them are tolerable. A tick drinks blood. A tapeworm absorbs nutrients. Unpleasant, yes, but comprehensible. These parasites take without killing immediately. They benefit from keeping the host alive. But there's another category. A darker one. Parasites that don't just steal resources. They hijack, they reprogram. They turn living creatures into puppets. These parasites don't coexist with their hosts. They consume them from the inside out. They rewrite behavior. They control minds. And when they're done, the host dies in a way that benefits only the parasite. This isn't symbiosis. This isn't even predation. This is something else. Something that feels fundamentally wrong. Let me show you what I mean. Let's start with something that looks beautiful. The jewel wasp. Emerald green. Metallic blue. Stunning. But its method of reproduction is pure nightmare. The jewel wasp hunts cockroaches, not to eat them. To use them. When it finds a cockroach, it doesn't kill it. Instead, it stings twice. The first sting paralyzes the front legs. The second sting, and this is where it gets disturbing, goes directly into the cockroach's brain. But the wasp doesn't inject venom to kill. It injects venom to control. The venom disables the cockroach's escape reflex. The cockroach is still alive, still conscious, but it can no longer feel fear. It can no longer run. The wasp then grabs the cockroach's antenna like a leash and leads it. The cockroach follows obediently. They walk together to the wasp's burrow. Once inside, the wasp lays an egg on the cockroach's abdomen. Then it leaves. The cockroach doesn't move. It doesn't try to escape. It just waits. When the egg hatches, the larva burrows into the cockroach, still alive, and begins eating it from the inside. The larva is careful. It avoids vital organs at first. It needs the cockroach to stay alive as long as possible. For days, the cockroach lives as a paralyzed, hollowed-out food source. When the larva finishes growing, it kills the cockroach, pupates inside the empty shell, and emerges as an adult wasp. The cockroach's entire purpose was to be a living incubator. This is precision. This is efficiency. This is horrifying. Now let's return to the ant from the beginning. This is Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, the zombie ant fungus. It starts as a spore. When an ant walks through an infected area, spores attach to its exoskeleton. They burrow through. Once inside, the fungus spreads. But it doesn't kill immediately. It waits. The fungus grows through the ant's body, avoiding the brain at first. It just observes, learns the ant's behavior. And then, at a specific point, the fungus releases chemicals into the ant system. The ant's behavior changes. It stops following its colony's pheromone trails. It stops working. Instead, it wanders aimlessly. Then comes the compulsion. The ant feels an overwhelming urge to climb. It must go higher. It doesn't know why. It just obeys. It climbs to a height of exactly 25 centimeters above the forest floor. Scientists have measured this. It's always the same height. Why? Because at that height, the temperature and humidity are perfect for fungal growth. The ant finds a leaf. It bites down on the underside again, always the underside, and locks its jaws. This is called the death grip. The ant dies. But the fungus is just beginning. Over the next week, the fungus consumes the ant's internal organs. It grows a stalk through the back of the ant's head. The stalk releases spores. They fall to the forest floor below, where other ants are walking. The entire sequence is programmed. The fungus controls every step. The ant had no choice. From the moment the spore entered its body, its fate was sealed. It became a delivery mechanism, a spore launcher, a puppet. And the fungus did this without a brain, without thought. Just chemistry. Here's one that sounds like science fiction. There's a parasite called Simathoa exigua. It targets fish. When it enters a fish's mouth, it attaches to the base of the tongue. Then it drains the blood supply. The tongue atrophies, dies, falls off, and then the parasite replaces it. It attaches to the remaining stub and becomes a functional tongue. The fish uses the parasite to eat. The parasite shares the food. The fish lives the rest of its life with a parasite where its tongue used to be, and it doesn't even realize. This is the only known case of a parasite functionally replacing an organ. It's not just feeding off the host. It's integrating, becoming part of the anatomy. When scientists first documented this, they assumed it was a deformity, a mutated tongue. It took years to realize the truth. That's not a tongue. That's a parasite that learned how to be a tongue. The fish is alive. The parasite is alive. They coexist, but one of them wasn't invited. And then there's the hairworm. The hairworm infects crickets. It lives inside them, growing, coiled up in the body cavity. When it's ready to reproduce, it needs water. But crickets live on land, so the hairworm takes control. It releases proteins that manipulate the cricket's brain. The cricket suddenly becomes suicidally drawn to water. It will walk toward any light reflecting off a surface, ponds, rivers, even puddles. When it reaches the water, it jumps in. Crickets can't swim. They drown almost immediately. As the cricket dies, the hairworm emerges. A long writhing thread, sometimes 3 times the length of the cricket's body, uncoiling from the corpse. The worm swims away to reproduce. The cricket was just transportation, a vehicle programmed to drive itself into water so the parasite could escape. Researchers have documented this happening in mass events. Hundreds of crickets, all walking toward water at the same time, all drowning, all releasing hairworms. It's not madness. It's coordination. The parasites are synchronized, controlling hundreds of hosts at once. So how did this happen? How did evolution create something this specific, this horrifying? Let's start with a fundamental truth. Parasites have been evolving for as long as life itself. The first parasites were simple. Bacteria stealing nutrients, viruses hijacking cells. But as hosts developed defenses, immune systems, behaviors to avoid infection, parasites had to evolve counter strategies. This created an evolutionary arms race. Hosts adapt. Parasites adapt. But some parasites took a different path. Instead of fighting the host's defenses, they learned to manipulate them. Take the jewel wasp. Its venom doesn't destroy the cockroach's brain. It's surgical. The venom targets specific neurons, the ones responsible for escape behavior. It blocks dopamine receptors. It disables the motivation to flee. The cockroach's body still works. Its brain still functions, but the part that says run away is turned off. This level of precision required millions of years of trial and error. Wasps that stung randomly didn't succeed. The cockroach would escape or die too quickly. But wasps that happened to sting in just the right spot, those produced more offspring. Over generations, the behavior became instinctual, hardwired. The wasp doesn't understand what it's doing. It just knows. Sting here, then lead the cockroach home. It's genetic programming. refined by time. The zombie ant fungus is even more sophisticated. The fungus produces compounds that mimic the ant's own neurochemicals. It speaks the ant's language. When it releases these chemicals, the ant's brain interprets them as normal signals. Climb higher. That feels like the ant's own decision. The fungus doesn't force, it persuades. Recent research shows the fungus forms a network throughout the ant's body like a secondary nervous system. It grows around the brain but doesn't invade it. The brain stays intact. Why? Because the fungus needs the brain to function. A dead brain can't control a body. So the fungus keeps the brain alive but isolated. It intercepts signals. It filters information. The ant thinks it's making choices, but every choice is suggested by the fungus. This is mind control at the cellular level. And it works because evolution had millions of years to debug the system. The tongue-eating parasite evolved from simpler parasites that just fed on fish blood. At some point, one species started attaching to the tongue specifically. More blood flow there. More nutrients. But parasites that killed the tongue too quickly lost their food source. Parasites that kept the tongue alive thrived. But then the tongue would eventually die anyway. And here's where it gets interesting. Parasites that could still function as a tongue that could help the fish eat survived even longer. Because the fish stayed healthy. The parasite had a long-term home. This wasn't intentional design. It was accidental success. The parasite that happened to be shaped like a tongue, that happened to move like a tongue, didn't get rejected by the fish's immune system. And so, over time, natural selection favored parasites that were better at being tongues. Now we have a parasite that functionally replaces an organ, not because it planned to, but because it worked. Here's the uncomfortable part. When we look at these parasites, we use words like wrong and horrifying. We call them nightmares, abominations. But from the parasite's perspective, this is perfect design. The jewel wasp doesn't torture the cockroach for pleasure. It's ensuring its offspring survive. The zombie ant fungus doesn't control the ant out of malice. It's reproducing. The tongue-eating parasite isn't evil. It found a niche and filled it. These strategies work. That's why they exist. And that's what makes them disturbing. Because we want nature to have rules. We want predation to be clean, quick. The lion kills the gazelle. It's brutal, but it's over. But parasites violate that. They extend suffering. They manipulate minds. They turn hosts into living puppets. And nature allows it. Because nature doesn't care about suffering. It only cares about what works. And here's where it gets personal. Humans are hosts too. Toxoplasma gondii, a parasite that infects rats, makes them unafraid of cats. The rats get eaten. The parasite reproduces in the cat. But Toxoplasma also infects humans. About a third of the global population has it. And there's evidence it changes our behavior, subtly. Infected people take more risks. They're more impulsive. We don't know the full extent of what it does to us, but we know it does something. There are parasites that cause depression, parasites that alter personality, parasites that we don't even realize are influencing us. How many of our decisions are truly ours? How much of human behavior is guided? We like to think we're in control, that our thoughts are our own. But if a fungus can make an ant climb to a specific height and bite a specific leaf, what's stopping something from influencing us? There's a question scientists don't like to ask out loud. Are parasites more successful than predators? Predators have to hunt. They expend energy. They risk injury. They might fail. Parasites just wait, infiltrate, manipulate, and their success rate is staggering. For every lion, there are millions of parasites. For every shark, billions of parasitic worms. Parasitism might be the most successful survival strategy on Earth, which raises a disturbing thought. What if parasitism isn't the exception? What if it's the norm? What if the problem isn't that parasites exist? What if the problem is that we think they shouldn't? So did nature make a mistake with parasites? No, because nature doesn't make mistakes. Nature doesn't have intentions. Evolution isn't designing life to be beautiful or fair or comfortable. Evolution is testing what survives. And parasites survive very well. The jewel wasp will continue to zombify cockroaches. The fungus will continue to puppet ants. The tongue parasite will continue to replace tongues, not because they're evil, not because they're wrong, but because they work. And in nature, working is all that matters. We call these creatures nightmares because they violate our sense of how life should be. But they don't care about our sense. They don't care about fairness. They evolve to exploit, to manipulate, to control. And they're extraordinarily good at it. The truth is, nature isn't cruel. Cruelty requires intent. Nature is indifferent. It doesn't care if a cockroach suffers. It doesn't care if an ant loses its mind. It only cares if the strategy works, and these strategies work. Which means they'll keep happening, forever. Because in nature's design, there's no wrong design. There's only what survives. These parasites will outlast us. They've been here longer. They'll be here after. Not because they're special, not because they're chosen, but because they found a way. A terrible, efficient, perfect way. And nature never stops anything that works. If you want to see more of nature's impossible designs, subscribe. Because the rules aren't what we thought they were. And the exceptions are everywhere.